Let me examine you, young man. You don't like boys, but you like supernatural?
Yes.
Hello, and welcome to Saving People, Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where the trans Dean headcanon is confirmed.
Today, we are pulling up to season 4 with episode 5, Monster Movie. I'm Elayna, pronouns she and they.
I'm Noah, pronouns he, him, and today we have a special guest on this week. Jenn, would you like to introduce yourself again?
Hi guys, I'm Jenn. Pronouns are she, her. It would be pretty messed up if I said that no, I didn't want to introduce myself.
Well, we're glad to have you back. This is your second or third time?
Second
time. Okay. I've been on both with you, so I feel very lucky.
Hey, thank you.
You have really fun conversation points that I'm super stoked to dive into this week. We get a very meta episode this week, which is enjoyable always.
Oh my God. This episode is phenomenal. So meta.
Yeah, I'm so curious to hear what you both think of this, because Jenn, you and I have obviously never talked about this, and Noah, this is your first time seeing it, so it's just good times.
Oh, it's my first time seeing it too, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh goodness, that makes me feel even better. So I'm the only vet on this one. That's fun.
Yep.
I love that. So now that you've met all of your hosts for this week, it is time to catch you up. So if you haven't watched Supernatural recently, here is what you missed on the road so far. First up, Noah is going to recap the show so far. So Noah, are you ready?
Of course. Give me just a little countdown.
Yeah. All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okie dokie. So far this season, Dean has woken up fresh out of hell. He's all saved and fine, trying to figure out why Cass, his beloved, meets him and realizes that he saved him. And God has a mission for Dean to do, which is to stop Sam. They deal with some ghosts of some prior people that, they've been responsible for killing. Dean goes, he freaking time travels. And then they deal with a little family guy who eats his family. We're good.
A little family guy who eats his family.
I was like, I'm out. Cool. But I dealt with the most of the important stuff. Cass is the important.
The fact that you called him his beloved took me out.
Got me. No one knows who the audience is.
I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah, that's what I love, is that, like, even though neither of y'all have seen the fullness of the later seasons, and Noah, you haven't seen any of it at all. I love how pervasive it is.
You can't not have felt the reverberations of the confession when it happened.
Yeah. Everyone, we decided to make the Destiel Putin election everyone's problem, whether they asked for it or not. But anyway, now it is time for the recap of this week's episode. So Jenn, are you ready to take us away?
Sure. I feel like I don't remember anything that happened, but let's go. Let's do it.
That's like the classic thing. It's like when someone asks you what your favorite book is and you've suddenly never read a word of the English language, it's just very classic.
Yeah.
So I will count you in.
Right.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so it's a typical thing where someone dies at the beginning of the episode. Sam and Dean have to figure out where it is. And also it's all black and white. It's a fun little thing. We love when the episodes have a fun little thing. So it's very reminiscent of a lot of monster movies, hence the title. They're in Pennsylvania. It's like this German type fair. And then there's a vampire attack, then a werewolf attack, but things aren't really lining up. And they think they found the person, but it's not. Turns out it's a shapeshifter. And in the end, they end up killing the shapeshifter anyway. And, the end to a typical monster movie.
Beautiful. Nice and succinct.
Okay, well, now that we're all caught up on where we've been, it's time to get our music playing so we can start the discussion and move into our episode mixtape, which is where we pick a little song that reminds us of the episode and how it made us feel. Elayna, did you have your song ready for today?
I do, and it's a very strange, off the beaten path answer, but I literally was sitting here and I was like, what is a song that makes me think of old Hollywood because of, the tone of the episode and how it's kind of like an homage to movies. And for whatever reason, the first thing that popped in my head was the opening title sequence for West Side Story. The original. The Spielberg remake is nice and all, but the OG title sequence orchestration is just, when I hear it, I'm like, this is the epitome of old Hollywood. And I just enjoy it. That's my pick.
Fantastic pick. Love it. Absolutely love West Side Story. My mom would be very proud of you for that pick.
Oh, good.
Jenn, did you get a song for this episode?
Yeah, I did. I kind of did it around like the theme, which is beauty for this theme. So I don't know. It made me just within the scope of supernatural and then also horror movies. Maybe think of exploitation, how you exploit a lot of beautiful people, particularly women. So I was like, oh, Girls on Film by Duran Duran. Great, a great song. In the more prudish United States, they won't even air like the original music video because it's so risque. But
really? I didn't know that about it.
Yeah. My dad and I discussed that because I knew there was like a more explicit cut of the film, but he was saying that he only saw like the actual like original cut when he was, I think, in like DR, somewhere on vacation, like way back in the 80s. And it was playing at a club, like all of the screens. And he was like, oh, this is not the one I've seen on MTV.
Oh. Huh.
So.
What an interesting angle. No, I love how I say that having not seen it, so I have no idea what I'm talking about.
You don't know which angle you're talking about.
I mean, it was like 80s, so I don't know if it would be like crazy by our standards, but it would still probably be like, there would at least be like a warning on YouTube before you could play it.
If they banned it from being aired, that I don't know. I'm gonna look into this after this episode.
Yeah.
But Noah, do you have a mixtape contribution for us?
Yes, I went with Bored by Wingtip. Fantastic little track, kind of from the monster's perspective a little bit.
Ooh.
Because it talks about, I don't hate you, I'm just bored. I don't know what we're fighting for. I'm going back and forth in like a relationship, and I don't hate you, I'm just bored. So I'm trying to come up with drama to fill the time, fill the void. And I don't know, it's a stretch.
No, that's a good choice, actually. I love that we all like picked a completely different element of it to base our song on. I think that's kind of cool.
That's what makes the show work.
Indeed. So now that we have got our mixtape playing, it is time for the hunt of the week. So let's get the show on the road with today's episode, Monster Movie Through the Theme of Beauty. Does anyone have a specific place they want to start? I feel like beauty is a really cool theme for this episode in particular. Beauty
was honestly a fantastic theme for this one because, I mean, it's all about a shape-shifting monster changing his appearance to fit his appealing version of life.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to embody what his definition of beautiful is. Which that actually makes me think we should look at the specific definition of beauty. As per Google, our good friend Google, the definition of beauty is a combination of qualities such as shape, color, or form that pleases the aesthetic senses, especially the sight.
Especially the sight.
What's interesting is that's the number one definition. The second one is just a beautiful woman.
You can't use the word. and I understand that beautiful is different than beauty, but still that's rough.
Yeah, that's rough. But yeah, that first one, I feel like that kind of speaks to the shapeshifter character because like everything that he's doing is because of what his combination of qualities and his aesthetic and what he likes. So basically, like in a weird meta way, the episode is just vibes.
Fair.
I don't know where that thought came from, but you're welcome, internet.
Yeah. Well, we love a good gimmick, as I say in my notes. Anytime Supernatural pulls out a gimmicky episode, I'm like all about it. It's my favorite.
Okay. Yeah. Right off the start, black and white. Love it. Mm-hmm. Super cool. I love when they take such a risky move. And
it was such a like kind of double entendre because they say when they're in the car, he's like, yeah, just a classic black and white case.
Time the Winchesters got back to just a good old black and white case. And he takes a pause there, an extra pause. And it's
yeah.
And then I just sigh like, yeah, here we go again. Here it is. All right.
Oh, I was dying. It was so good.
And then I personally was very excited that it takes place in Pennsylvania because that's where I've literally lived my entire life. But the fact that the sign flashed between Pennsylvania and Transylvania just made me very happy.
Yeah. And I actually really enjoyed it too, because obviously, well, like I mentioned it in the show notes too, because there's these moments of things being diegetic, right? So whether they exist in the actual piece of media itself or they exist separate. So like a film score, for example, a lot of times that's kind of the listeners can hear it, but the people in the film aren't necessarily hearing the film score. But in this, they did play with that. Like in the beginning, they were even like, oh, this music's weird. And they turn the radio off and everything. There's stuff
such
like
a nice touch.
Right, where like within the episode, it's very much like, oh, this is making fun of or referencing all these classic horror tropes, but because, Sam and Dean are basically going, what the hell the entire time, it comes off way more as like Young Frankenstein, which was a Mel Brooks film from the 70s, which was black and white, very comedic while having those horror tropes, which was just amazing.
That's an incredible parallel that I had not considered.
Yeah, I just love it. I can't remember. I feel like in a previous episode, they've made some references to like Blazing Saddles and stuff. Oh, and like Babylon, there's been a few of those. So just love that.
Yeah. Whenever Supernatural, and we've said this before on the podcast, and I'm sure we'll say it a jillion more times, but Supernatural is at its best when it's playing with meta. And this episode is a textbook example of that, because whenever they try to break the fourth wall and, like you said, do something gimmicky, it ends up somehow being the best shit that they do.
Yeah.
It's like the more they try to be weird, the more they actually just become like a genuinely good show. And I just, as a very weird person, I enjoy that, knowing that like the weirder, the better,
Definitely.
I very much enjoyed the whole moment when Dean is at the bar for the first time and he does the, very typical like film noir, I'm a maverick, I don't play by the rules. Like that whole little section, I was just like, Dean, sweetheart, you really think that you are a hero of a movie from the 40s. And it's not just because the episode's in black and white. That's just genuinely how you behave.
Yeah, I know. But you know what else was really funny too, honestly, was the quote unquote bar wench that Dean made.
Oh, yes.
The waitress, the bartender, Jamie, who I think I'm like, oh my God. Final girl, best final girl. I think it's something like this, talking about beauty, right? She's very much like, definitely fits into Eurocentric beauty standards, right? Like pale, blonde, thin, very symmetrical features, just a beautiful woman, right? But, she had a really fun rapport with Dean. And honestly, it's probably like the most respectful blonde love interest that we've ever had in Supernatural, dare I say,
And yet she still gets called a bar wench, but like in a weird consensual kind of way, because she seems to like be okay with it, even though it's kind of cringe and weird.
Yeah. I'm assuming in my head she already had a conversation with Dean at that point, so she figures like, he's just having fun, whatever.
That's the hope anyway.
He's a very sassy individual.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, especially after that first interaction they had where she's like, you don't look like a fed, like,
Yeah.
But yeah, she's pretty great. I actually really, I've only like kind of watched bits and pieces of this episode for the rewatch because I've seen it numerous times. But in those like little bits that I was seeing, I actually really like her, like more than I remember liking her as a character.
Oh, yeah.
She has a lot of really nice moments with Dean. Like the one where right before they kiss is, I think, a really nice one because just Dean kind of gets very real with her for a minute in this way where he's still got his arm around her and is, playing that, classic like detective action hero-y kind of guy. But there's like Jensen with his acting choices just has this slight shift. Jensen's tone, the way that he's acting it, where it feels like he just gets deeper into Dean for a second. I don't know if either of you noticed that, but I thought it was like a really nice choice.
I didn't pick it up specifically, but now I'm going to have to go back and check it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think Dean has, and this is me coming off of like the earlier seasons, like the first like 2 seasons, I've been spending a lot of time back there where it's like someone, and usually a woman, shows Dean like the slightest bit of like empathy and understanding. And he's like, well, I guess I need to open up to you.
Yep. He's
he's like, I have no other choice. You need to know my life story, which is so funny. Like all I'm thinking about is like, for all the problems that Route 666 had, you had like Cassie.
Oh, Cassie is like the best.
But you have the thing, right? Where like Sam's like, I've dated Jess for 1.5 years and I never told her. And Dean's like, okay, well, that's on you. I dated Cassie for 3 weeks and I told her everything.
Yep.
So I think that's who Dean is. I think that's just who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, he's a maverick, you could say.
Oh, he's a maverick.
He was having fun this episode though, and I feel like I haven't watched the entirety of season 4, but I have a feeling that's kind of a rarity. So good on Dean for having a bit of fun. Well,
this is the season, and I'm not going to give any spoilers because Noah, I don't want to ruin this for you. And because I don't know what you do or don't know about this episode, Jen, but on the head of a pin.
Am I seeing that one? Yeah. That wasn't, yeah.
Dean does not have a good time that episode, and that's all I'll say.
No, he doesn't.
We got some time.
We have a little bit of time before we get there. Okay. For a total shift in tone from Dean not having a good time, Lederhosen. We must talk about the Lederhosen.
Love that look. Such a good look.
This is literally the entire episode just foreshadows, I think, how much of a nerd he truly is and how excited he would be to dress up and have a little acting moment for the weekend or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, it speaks a little to how I think Dean perceives beauty, because he even has that whole line at the end where he's like, movies, like they're simple. And I think that Dean is someone who finds beauty in that simple stuff that most people would overlook. It's these little joys, like getting to dress up and be in something that's very monster movie-ish, that makes Dean into like a giddy 5-year-old.
Yeah, can't blame him.
Yeah, I can't either. Oh, this is on the note of like the whole beauty theme with the shapeshifter. I think it's really cool, like the way that he describes movies, like the phrase that he has. He's like, it's grand, simple, elegant. And I think that all of those words are things that can like embody the idea of something that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this character. I think the character of the shifter is a really interesting villain for the show, because like he's being a complete whack job, but for like very deep reasons that that make sense when he describes them.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, when I saw that the theme for this episode was beauty, I was like, I don't know how to make this work. I don't know. So I was trying to like look at everything I'd seen. But I think beauty and horror together are kind of coming up with the dichotomy of that, looking at studying, if you're very into the horror genre, right? Studying why things are scary or terrifying or horrifying. And, I'm not super well versed, but it's been said that there are kind of different within the scope of like a scary medium, right? There are different ways that things will affect you. So there are things that could be very gross or disgusting, or, things that are just very unsettling. But I think this is me in like my sociology major, like back in the day, through, right? And looking at beauty as a set of societal norms, because I mentioned it with Jamie being like, we would consider her a very beautiful person, but would she be, a beautiful person in 1600s Japan? Maybe not, right? She would probably look like a very different person and very outside of that realm of beauty, and, vice versa. A lot of the fashion trends or how we want to look or present ourselves can be very determined on where we are in society and where we are in a particular culture. And I think kind of similar horror is, in some forms of horror, I think, are when you do something that's very outside of that cultural norm. So you're no longer doing something that's expected or safe. You're this aberration, which is what the shapeshifter bills himself as.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned like the time, because they're going for a very specific time and place and type of horror movie. And they're studying this idea of horror through that lens. And this guy like sees it as like, this thing that back in its day was deemed as terrifying is, I think, the most beautiful thing. And it goes kind of back to that definition of, it comes down to like, what do you personally think is beautiful? Because what he's thinking is beautiful is definitely not what I think Dean or Sam or any of the other characters would see as beauty in the same way.
Right.
He sees it much more as power and control and the ability to be impressive as a beauty.
Even if it means he's wearing stuff from, visual effects house or whatever the heck was the name.
Can we shout out Todd Stashwick, the actor who played the Dracula form of the shapeshifter?
He did a good job.
Killed it. Yeah. This guy shows up in like everything. I feel like he's a hero. but he.
Wait, does he? I don't know anything else that I've seen him in.
He's got guest spots on like Psych, Monk, American Horror Story, The Mentalist, Heroes, Gotham,
Jeez.
911.
Noah has his list ready.
I came ready.
That's like Noah's niche. He always knows every actor, every side actor that ever has shown up in the show. He's like, yeah, they're amazing. They were in X, Y, Z, and Q.
It's mostly Psych.
Like literally every supernatural like minor actor has been on Psych. I've yet to be on a supernatural podcast where someone, usually KJ for Supernatural Opinions, has like always mentioned, oh, this person was on Psych.
Yeah, like, it's like, oh, this person was on that one episode, season 3. You remember with the season? Okay, yeah, okay, move on. But
yeah, see, I'm that
Psych.
friend. Whenever I'm watching other stuff, I'll be like, oh, that person was on Supernatural, and my roommates just look at me and are like, again, like really, truly, there are still people you're finding in things that were in Supernatural. And I'm like, look, it's not my fault that Aaron Burr was in a one-off episode in season 7.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
We'll get there.
Are you saying Leslie Odom Jr. is going to show up season 7?
Yep.
Yes.
Not telling you where, not telling you how.
Unfortunately, but you know,
love it. But yes, Todd Stashwick killed it. He did such an over-the-top Dracula impression, but faltered at the right times and dropped to a normal, quote unquote. He did so good at portraying the villain, but who's struggling to be the villain.
Yeah.
It was very interesting.
I think my favorite bit with him is when he has to like go upstairs to get the pizza. And as he's going up the stairs, just just the way he runs up the stairs, like give this man an Emmy.
Oh my God, he killed it. It was so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, the comedic timing, you want to talk about beautiful. The comedic timing in this episode is gorgeous.
When he says, does it have garlic? Did you order garlic?
Oh my God.
No. Then no. I felt that in every customer experience. Oh God. Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah.
I got to get close for this. This is a shifter episode. And the last time we had a shifter episode way back in season 1.
Season 2. We had
Ronnie. Night Shifter.
Oh, you're right. Season 2, Night Shifter was a great episode.
I think we've
the
had
first
one
time we see a shifter though in season 1. I think that's continued to feed Dean stands to this day.
Yeah.
Many years later, because, and of course, this time around too, Dean has the most amount of interaction with the shapeshifter. So
is that subliminal messaging? It's like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also, I'm putting it on Ben Edlin. I know that, other people were on this as well, but I'm like, Ben, my buddy, Ben, my best friend, Ben. But
he writes some damn good episodes.
He does write some really good episodes. I think he really has a great understanding of Cass, and I think also Dean, I would say too. But, I think I put in my notes, the shifter at one point, right, is talking to Jamie about how his father called him a monster for being different and tried to beat him to death with a shovel. And I'm like, okay, Ben, all right, you're really coming at us with this?
Chill, bro.
I feel like if we as a society were able to harness the power of all the supernatural writers' daddy issues, we could solve the energy crisis tomorrow. Just
problem solved right there.
It's an infinite supply that keeps on giving. And and no matter what they do, I mean, I obviously no spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, but the amount of daddy issues in The Boys, like Eric Kripke, are you okay? What is Eric Kripke's relationship with his father? Because it's gotta be messed up.
Gotta be bad.
If he and his dad are just like chums, then everything I know to be true in the world is a lie. But
yeah, no one's that good at making stuff up.
No.
I don't know.
No, just it's uncanny.
I do think another interesting thing in terms of like the horror movie and then discussing like beauty and then also bringing the queer narrative into it, or even bringing in like sort of this alternate viewpoint, right? Because the thing is, like, at the end of the episode, they kill the monster, so despite having sort of these moments of deconstructing the monster movie or having a discussion with the shapeshifter taking form of these different monsters, because from presumably a young age or some age in the past, right? Like he found solace in these particular beings as being sort of a better version of what he could be. I think similar to maybe what a lot of younger queer people might feel whenever they either watch queer media or they interpret a character or story as queer, right?
Amen.
But then, again, because we all know who's writing Supernatural. The monster still dies at the end. But I do think, again, it is really interesting to look at maybe some more recent horror films that are even set in the past, such as The Shape of Water, where you maybe have a different exploration of who and what a monster is and what beauty is, which this episode doesn't go into, but you know.
Yeah.
It starts to kind of try.
It dips its toes in, but it doesn't fully immerse itself.
Which I think is a microcosm of a lot of Supernatural, where it will explore sort of this other way of being or this other way of telling a story, but then at the last minute it kind of gets pulled back.
That's such a good way to describe the show. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone put it that simply and that succinctly.
Thank you. Coming from someone who has barely watched the show.
But no, you know what? That's
but it's easy, right? Like,
when you almost, in that way, having not seen the show, you, I think, actually have probably gained more knowledge about the essence of the show. Because the thing is, when you're like, and this is not to, to diss anybody that's like deeply steeped in the show. I mean, heck, that's me, that's Abigail, that's many people in this fandom. We know way too much. But like, there's something, you get a little lost sometimes in that knowledge, because you get very lost in the letter and you lose a little bit of the spirit of it. But I think that having not really seen the show and just knowing about the show secondhand, the two of you have both kind of been able to gain a sense of Supernatural spirit a little better than somebody who knows every episode and every line, because you've experienced it from a different perspective.
We've gotten the bleeding effects, not straight from the show, everything. We've gotten just whatever's made it to the edge, I
will say too, like, this is just from someone who's been in fandom for a really long time. And I've written fan fiction for a really long time. And I've written original work for a really long time. And same thing with, I think, a lot of these horror films that this episode is talking about. After a while, you're able to spot very common tropes and archetypes and things like that. So even though we have these beloved characters like Cass, Dean, Sam, I don't know about other fans, but I can still look at them and I'm like, oh, well, this is an archetype. Like, these are still archetypal characters.
I think that's one of the things that makes Supernatural so good, is that these characters fall so comfortably into their archetypes. And it's what makes it a little timeless in a way, for all of the very, very hyper specific pop culture references that you get in Supernatural that date it tremendously. Like, when Dean's like, what's a MySpace in season 1, it's got those, but the story overall is very much a hero's journey kind of story, which is great because there's an episode in the final season called The Hero's Journey. So yeah, they really did. And it's one of my favorite episodes. And they dig into that a lot. And I just think that's a really good point, because Sam and Dean and Cass all do very easily fit into those types.
Yeah. Well, still providing a huge amount of depth that I think part of it is because of the sheer length of the show. And I do think another part is actors, the writers. There are definitely some episodes that are better than others, but I think that Supernatural, one of its staying powers, I think, is the characters just kind of being handled fairly well for the most part in a really engaging way. And probably the other part is, I think, episodes like this where they sort of bend the genre, because I think even people who are like really big fans of Supernatural, and then people like Noah and I who maybe are not as familiar, I still think even if both of us were trying to describe in one word what Supernatural was by genre, it would be very hard. Like, it's not like, kind of, it's a mystery, it's kind of a procedural, but it's not. Yeah. It's not really horror. It's funny, it's comedy, but it's dramatic. But
like, this sentence is going to make it sound a lot loftier than it is, but it's just a true statement. This show defies genre. Like, technically, yes, it is the longest running fantasy sci-fi show in American history. Like, that is what it is objectively, but it has hilarious episodes. It has super genre-y episodes. It's got time loops, it's got time travel, it's got deeply human stories, it's scary, it's bloody, it's gory, it's tender, it's all of these different things.
I think that means that it's just a family show. It's a family genre. It's everything. It's for the whole family.
Except for my dad.
Except for the dads. Fuck dads.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad. I love you.
No, but that's not true because I feel like there were, at least back in the day, I feel like there were a lot of dudes who would just like come home from work and they would watch this show and then eventually.
I can't imagine being a straight man watching this show. Like what world do they live in?
They're around.
They are
around.
And
So.
I would be fascinated to speak to one of them. I say this like I'm an anthropological studying person, but I can't imagine how different
Let me
the show would be
examine you,
viewed.
young man.
Yes.
You don't like boys, but you like supernatural?
To all of our, cis male listeners that we might have.
All two of you.
I mean, yeah, all two of you. I mean, no disrespect. You're lovely and wonderful and amazing. And we enjoy that you listen. But what is the show like for you? Tell us on social media because I, for one, am very curious.
And I'm too scared to go on Supernatural Reddit.
That's fair.
Well, that about wraps up our main discussion for the episode. We can move right into our going meta section where we are tracking lore, representation, behind the scenes trivia, and more.
So we don't pass the Bechdel?
Well, okay.
Do we?
Lisa and Jamie.
Yeah, but do they talk about something other than a man?
They're talking at the bar. They talk about the weird guy. So not that part. I don't remember their conversation, but I feel like they're talking about the bar and the customers. So
yeah,
not quite.
There was a bit where like Dean's in the scene and, but they were kind of talking about what they were doing with their night, but
yeah. And then when she showed up later,
were kind of talking about like the situation being crazy.
Yeah, and they were talking about him attacking her. So like still a guy and Dean swooping in to save her.
Yeah, but I think right before that, I don't know. I feel like that might have been like not necessary.
It might have had one line.
Yeah.
Fighting for the bare minimum.
Maybe if we're splitting hairs this much, we need to say no.
I think it's a no.
Yeah.
If it takes more than 5 minutes to figure out, then yeah.
If we have to scrub it and be like, where's the several seconds in which the women look at each other?
And you can see the name tag on one of some stupid shit like that. Not a great.
But we have to. So since Abigail is not here, I have promised, nay, sworn that we would speak on the trans Dean theory because this is the episode where Dean says, and I quote, "I've been rehymenated."
I mean,
just casual things that cis men say, I guess.
Casual, totally a casual thing that I've totally heard cis men say in the conversation. Never, not once.
Like, my virginity is intact. Who says that?
Okay, well, I have heard that one. That one's.
But you've heard a guy say that?
Yes, I have.
That is so
in a joking way.
I apologize.
It was. But rehymenated is a bold way to go.
Yeah.
If you don't have some personal history with that, I mean, okay.
But yeah, I think it's such an interesting reading of Dean, and it's become one of my very favorite recent headcanons.
Same. And I really like watching the show fresh with that perspective because it gives a whole new feel to it. I like it.
Oh yeah. No, even in the pilot when they're like,
what's even real about you?
My boobs. Like,
there's
it's been there from day one.
Day one.
There you go. Take this to Reddit. Take this to Supernatural Reddit.
Oh, it's there. It's there. That's where it thrives.
There has to be like a 400 deep thread somewhere about this because it's too prevalent to ignore.
I don't want to spoil anything for Noah, but literally all I could think about is like, the other Ben Edlund episode from early next season. Dean says an interesting line too.
As far as relationship dynamics go for this episode, we had poor representation for women and how Dean refers to them.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about a little bit earlier. And
not I'm really not a fan of the bar wench thing. It's like I get that he's playing it like a joke, but
it's Oktoberfest and she plays along with it, but she shouldn't have to.
Yeah, it's so tired and they do it so often in Supernatural. I'm just like, guys, get a new fucking shtick. This is old. It's tired. It bothered me every other time I've watched it, and it bothered me on this watch. And I think, like we were kind of talking about this earlier, you said I try to find ways to reason with it and to make excuses for it, but it just bugs me.
Yeah.
You know how I was saying earlier that like Dean's having a lot of fun in this episode? Well, in moments like these, I'm like, Dean, you're having too much fun. You
You need to calm the fuck down, sweetie.
Calm down. This episode also kind of feels they tried to fit in a bunch of deaths, right? So they kind of rushed them. And so that one in the car where the guy's talking about blue balls and is all going off. They really, really lay it on so you don't feel bad at all when he's butchered 20 seconds later. Like, and it's unnecessary, but you really don't feel any sympathy for that character, which is good.
No.
He gets ripped up and they're move on.
And then she's like drinking a Slurpee, like really weirdly.
Yeah, she's totally
like
fine.
what was it?
It was her and then the other guy with like the beer stein. I'm like, what is it with these people who've been traumatized and they need a big gulp, you know?
Yeah.
They're drinking a huge okay, chill.
You know how you're like, I need my special drink. I did something today. I need to get my special drink. It's like, I just saw someone I love die. I need a special drink, like a really big
Where's
one.
my pumpkin spice latte?
Yeah. I also think in terms of the meta, there are like so many different references throughout this episode. And I think I mentioned it like before we started recording about how Jamie's like after Sam and Dean are talking about like shapeshifters and whatever, Jamie's like, oh, you guys are like Mulder and Scully. This is like the X-Files, which is a joke. They make an X-Files joke even in the pilot. And then Dean turns to her and is like, no, the X-Files is a TV show. This is real. I'm like, shut up. I'm like, shut up.
I appreciate whenever those moments happen because I'm just like, I know what you did there.
They are funny. They're very funny.
They really do.
Yeah, and they only get more unhinged the longer you stay in this show. Like
good.
The supreme feral energy of late season Supernatural is beautiful.
So get this. I was checking into the lore. I mean, okay, so we've talked about the shifter, right? There's a lot of lore established about them in prior seasons, and nothing really new came up as far as I'm aware.
The only thing I can say that might qualify for Lost Canon is the idea of a shifter turning into something that's not another person. Like, because when he shifts into the werewolf, and not like a proper werewolf, because we do get that whole mention of how like it left the heart intact and that's not something a real werewolf would ever do. But like to become a werewolf, and even as a vampire, like he does have legit fangs that grow out of his face. Yeah. And so it's like, how are you doing this? Well, like, what kind of a powerful shifter are they dealing with that has abilities to shift into things beyond the human form?
Change their mass that extreme. Yeah.
That's, I think, kind of an interesting thing that, as far as I can remember, doesn't really ever get brought up again. Yeah, I think that might qualify for Lost Canon jar. But
yeah, I feel like it also kind of implies when the shifter was talking about, you know, his father calling him a monster and that sort of thing, that sometimes I think shifters just like happen, you know, like they were maybe born to a human family. I feel like
it's a mutation of the human gene kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like was it almost like a metamorphosis, right? With like the previous episode, it seemed like there's sort of a genetic component and maybe it's latent and then it gets activated or something. I feel like in season 1 of Skin, it wasn't very explicitly stated, but I feel like the shifter, when it was in Dean's form, even seemed to talk about like something similar, as if like they were maybe part of a human family, but were ostracized and kicked out because they were shifters.
I think it was like one of their parents was a shifter or something.
Maybe, yeah.
If memory serves. I could be wrong.
It's a very interesting monster to me. You know, they don't show up as often as other monsters in Supernatural. So whenever they do, I think it's always like cool to see like what that particular shifter's deal is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What their trauma is.
They're definitely, I would say for me personally, they're one of my more favored monsters because just the episodes that have shifters.
Night Shifter was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Mine too. I love Night Shifter. Oh, so
Ronnie is so good. Oh God.
Yeah. Pour one out for our dear buddy Ronnie.
Boy. The only other thing that I really saw that established lore is when Dean references Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, I mean, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is what he's referencing.
Yeah, so it's like a pop culture-y moment.
Yeah, but he says, "Got to see Raiders," and Sam's like, "Oh, I already saw it while you were in hell." Like, sorry. And so, I mean, the timeline matches up because Crystal Skull came out in May of 2008, and this is coming out in the fall of 2008. So it'd be September,
Dean,
August.
Just missed it. He
Yeah.
just
Sweet
missed
baby.
it too.
Slightly fun personal story. My first job ever was at a movie theater, and my first weekend on the job was the weekend Indiana Jones 4 came out. And
Dang, look at that.
It was
May
bananas.
22nd, 2008. Well,
yeah, it was bananas.
damn.
So it is now time for our last and generally favorite part of the episode, our character blessings. Who would y'all like to, who wants to go first in who you're blessing this week?
I'll go first. I'm going to go ahead and bless Sam this week because I think he has a strong presence in this episode. He's not the one that's, flirting it up with everybody around town, but he's off doing the dirty work and putting in the man hours and walking everywhere. And I just really respect him for that. Proud of him. Blessings to Sam.
Nice.
Yeah, so true. Also, we had to deal with Dean at like his most Dean this episode. Which
he's like,
I think
he's like peak Dean in this episode.
Oh yeah.
He's like Dean TM symbol.
And Sam let him have his fun. So you know what? He was being a real good brother this time. I'm proud of him.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
So who do you have for your blessing, Jen?
Oh my God, it's Jamie. How could anyone have guessed? Well, first of all, I love women. Second of all, love the really rare opportunity where Supernatural actually seems to treat a woman with one iota, one speck of like dignity and respect, especially if you only see her for one episode. So she was very fun. Kudos for her for like tasing the vampire when it cornered her and running away, being sassy, being fun, shooting the monster at the end. We love a final girl.
Queen shit right there.
Queen shit.
Blessings for that queen behavior.
Elayna, what about you?
I am going to bless Dean. Surprise. My reason, and it's sheerly because of that one scene that I mentioned earlier when we were recording, where he has that like kind of quiet, super personal, vulnerable Dean moment. And I was looking at my notes, and the line that he said, which he was like, where I feel like I'm on a mission from God, and just there's some weight to his voice when he says that. Like he's not saying it in the jokey Dean manner. At that point, he's saying it in this way of like, holy shit, like I'm supposed to be on a mission from God, and I do not think I am important enough to have one of those. And it's just very Dean. So I want to bless Sweet Dean for that moment, because he's got a lot that he's processing at this point in the show, and it's intense. And I want to hug him
for many reasons. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode today. Jen, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It was great being on.
Your points were amazing as always.
Thank you.
Is there anywhere on the internet that people can find you after the episode so that you can keep sharing the love?
Yeah, you can find me on AO3, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, all of those. Same username. It's Rupert Gaze. And, I'll be around.
You'll be back for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I feel like this is like kind of the tail end of my Supernatural vacation. Then I'll probably be back into it soon.
Perfect.
Oh, good.
Well, make sure you are all subscribed to Saving People Queering Things wherever you listen to your podcasts, and share our show with your friends. Spread the word.
You can find links to our social media and join our Discord server through our website, queeringthingspodcast.com. And our Discord is where we are building a listener community. So if you want to make friends and talk to our hosts and have a good time generally with supernatural tomfoolery, come hang out with us there. It's going to be a good time. Be sure to ride along with us next week as we discover episode 6, Yellow Fever, through the theme of human nature.
Thank you all for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.